pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Twyla, the roll call.
Yes, Councillor Beckford.
Here.
Councillor Bowie.
Here.
Councillor Cody.
Here.
Councillor Rochelle has been excused. Councillor Lunt.
Here.
Councillor Mason.
Here.
Councillor Pomelo.
Here.
All right, first item, Twyla.
There's no public hearings. It's under consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed for discussion? Seeing none, Order 2011-38, to approve the minutes of March 15, 2011, Vitula renewals as presented, mobile home park renewals as presented, and a renewal mass gathering permit for the Downtown Network Promotion Committee.
So moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item.
Is under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2011-39, the 2009 tax abatement.
You should have in your packets a letter that was addressed to a Mr. Sear, that Mr. Van Tynen addressed to him. It was something that Mr. Van Tynen found in a folder. The time, for, it was an abatement that was supposedly going to be granted, and the assessor, prior assessor, misplaced it, or whatever the reasons, it didn't get done in a timely fashion. So in order to correct that in the time frame, it has to come before the council for their approval, as laid out under 841.
I'd make a motion to accept.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any discussion from the council? Anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed, 6-0.
Next item.
Order 2011-40, council working rules.
Okay, we'd had some discussion in a workshop about changing the working rules to try to make our meetings flow a little better, but we're only 3 of us were there that night, so I'm wondering how the other councilors feel on it, if you have any opinions or feelings on this.
I feel that we were supposed to have a workshop on that, and I still feel we should. 3 councilors were not, were the only 3 participating in the meeting, and I think it should go to a workshop and discuss totally what the working rule changes will be and what the ramifications of the changes would do.
How do the rest of you feel on that? Any opinions? Right. Okay, well, what we talked about is the idea of moving the audience participation section to the beginning of the meeting, right after the consent agenda, and then, other than that, the public wouldn't be allowed to speak on each individual item the way they are now. So the idea is you could come in at the beginning and talk about any issue you had with any item, but then we could move quicker through the rest of the business. And that way we could actually try to get these meetings done before 11 o'clock.
The problem with that, there are issues that are discussed in a meeting, and people may want to add comment to whatever the issue might be at the meeting of that particular evening. And they are unable to because you've taken it away from them by having the audience participation at the beginning of the meeting. So I totally disagree with that.
Any thoughts from other councilors on that?
I mean, I'm okay with it. It sounds a lot more like the way the school committee runs their actual meetings, their business meetings.
Different.
To an extent. Actually, their meetings, right, they have one section for audience participation. That's all they can talk about. They can only talk about things that are on the agenda, I believe. This, I think, is stating you're just talking about moving it up front. You can talk about any issues you have with the agenda or any other issues that you would like council to address or to bring forward to council, so.
I mean, if the council would like to have another workshop on it, we certainly can do that. I just need to know how other councilors feel.
I think we should.
Well, it was only like 3 of us.
Three of us, yeah.
Three of us there.
If the council
So
prefer to have another full workshop with, hopefully we can get more attendance there, that would.
Okay, either way, really.
Do we need a vote on this, on taking a workshop?
I think we should move it to a workshop.
All right. Mr. Fillmore, do you have a comment you'd like to add there?
Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. If you move the audience participation up and not let us speak at the other items under council orders and resolutions, the consent agenda, or the other business, then you're taking we the people out of the agenda, okay? You're not allowing us to comment on things that you do. This is another perfect example of this council not doing things out in the open with the public's knowledge. 99% of what goes on is behind closed doors. And we don't get any vote, we don't get any say, we get nada. And that's not the way this is supposed to work. We are the people, and we should have a voice in what goes on in this town. Gina preaches more participation in council meetings, more participation in what goes on in this government or this town. You put that on one hand, and then you say, we can't talk. You go into workshops, you go, ho, you can't talk. It doesn't make any difference if anybody in this town has a great idea or not during any of these items, because you won't let us speak. So it's not fair to say on one hand, we don't have enough participation in this town, and then turn around and say, we don't want you to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so I think my suggestion would be we bring this back to a workshop and discuss it with the full council and try to have everyone there. Are the councilors okay with that? All right, so we'll have to schedule another workshop for that and have a full discussion. Hopefully we can get everyone there.
Mark, can I ask?
Certainly.
I don't think that you need to ask for public comment on each individual item. Wait
Okay.
until you get to audience participation. And
Okay.
then that way it does give them an opportunity to speak on that. It's not a public hearing on
Right,
each
yeah.
item. So if we do all of them together and then get to audience participation and let them speak on it, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, well, I do think for the orders, because we're going to take a vote, we need to let them speak before we're going to take a vote on something. You see what I'm saying, Larry?
Not necessarily, because some of these issues come back to a public hearing.
Right.
And if they have a question on what we're voting on,
But
then they
some,
could discuss it in audience participation.
but say like with the tax abatement there, they couldn't have commented on that because we'd have already voted, so it would be pointless.
I disagree.
Okay, that's why I suggested moving the audience participation to the beginning, so if people wanted to discuss something, they would still have a chance.
So then, why do we have a bullet for audience participation? Because we're actually allowing audience to participate after each and every item.
Well, my understanding is that the audience participation is for anything that doesn't fall under any of those specific issues, that right now they have to speak to those issues that they're talking on and not, if they have an unrelated item about you didn't plow my street, that would have to come under audience participation.
Okay, well, that's something that we should probably talk about in the workshop then, because if you look at the working rules,
Right.
it allows for a time where audience can participate, and it's a time to bring up things that are on the agenda or not on the agenda. And the way that we're doing it right now is we allow audience participation after each and every item, so we can't conduct this meeting as a business meeting.
All right, well, we'll definitely have to discuss that at the workshop. All right. Next item, Twyla?
Order 2011-41, sign ordinance amendment, first reading, roll call vote.
These you reviewed at your last meeting, and in order to move them forward into a public meeting, you need to take a vote of the council. I don't know if you want to rehash what's in there or ask questions, but on the 19th, if you vote to move these forward, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and have the public ask questions at that time.
Right, that'll be the full public hearing. at
Yes,
our
for all
next
three of those, the
meeting.
Lisbon sign ordinance, Lisbon comprehensive plan update, and the Board of Assessment review update.
Mr. Chairman? But it's my understanding, though, that you can't make any major changes
Right.
after the first reading
That's
for a
correct.
public hearing without having to go back to another reading.
That's right.
So basically, you're saying you're okay with this particular first reading unless you get drastic input from the public hearing,
We'll
and
go back and redraft it.
you have to go back and redraft
Bring
and
it
start over
back up.
again.
Yep.
But this is available to the public, so they can see what's, so I would hope that if anybody had a major issue with anything, they'd contact somebody. It's up to the public to do their homework too, I think.
Do we get some copies distributed for the audience tonight?
There should be some there,
Should be
yes.
some there, okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Are we
question.
addressing these one at a time?
Do we all have to? Yeah?
Yes, you will.
Yep.
Mark,
Yes.
under the section 4B, where it talks about the regulations and the changing, the sign
Signs.
changing, the last line says, "On each side of a changeable sign shall not flash." When we're talking about changing the amount of time that, like, one statement could stay on there and then it changes to another one, if they do that quickly, it actually gives the appearance of a flash. There's actually 2 signs right in Lisbon that have been noticing, one on the bank and one on the pizzeria there, that they change pretty quickly, and so it does look like it's flashing. So do we leave it kind of loosey-goosey, or do we make a provision to say that, what? Because they're meeting the intent of how we're changing this when it comes to the timing of how quickly a message can change, but it still looks like a flash. And particularly the one on the bank, you
Yeah.
know, with the blue and the red, and it almost looks like emergency personnel lights, because it changes so quickly, it flashes, or it appears to flash.
I think right now, some of those signs are not within the ordinance, that they're, they're in violation of it.
I don't know.
Right.
No.
So, do
Only
you
the school
feel that we
department.
kind of leave that open-ended, or?
Mike.
Yeah, oh, sorry, Mike, didn't see you.
Finish with Lori.
You all set, Laurie?
No, I just wanted to know if
Yeah,
we,
no,
if we look at changing it, or do we go forward with?
So you're saying we need to change, in your suggestion, the, which item here? I'm trying to,
Well, the 4B, the
Yeah.
last line, you know, we talked about changing, let's go to the beginning of it. We talked about changing the regulation D1, the display on each side of the changeable sign may be changed no more frequently than once every 10 seconds. We changed it to 10 seconds. Well, allowing a change every 10 seconds, still, if you turn it over on the back on 4B, does give the appearance that it's a flash to that light, or to that sign.
I'm trying to think how you, would fix that, since this, the nature of the sign, I think changing would be a flash, I mean,
I mean, and if folks think that because we don't have an ordinance that specifies that, and if we got something in place that could be enforced, that it would correct that problem? And then it also makes me question, you know, do people know
Right.
that there's certain, you know, guidance that they should be following?
I mean, I think some of the signs are changing faster right now than they're allowed by the ordinance, so, you know, people would have to complain to code enforcement.
Mike, did you have something else?
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So we're changing this so they can change a sign every 10 seconds rather than a minute?
Yes.
So does it, I think that's wrong, first of all, but I think you need to change 4A then, right? Because 4A still says 1 minute,
Says 1 minute.
1 minute.
right? So, I mean, I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
that we have this all, there's other sections in here too as well that reference 1 minute, I believe. If you look at 7013 B1, also reference to every 1 minute.
Yep.
Right, so I don't believe this has been marked up and changed appropriately, so I don't think it's valid for a first reading. I personally would like to have further discussion on why we think it should be 10 seconds.
Oh, certainly, if you, you know, I'm,
I mean, I know it probably wasn't at the meeting, but I think 10 seconds is
okay.
too quick
Mike,
for distractive to traffic.
Okay, Mike, would you like to come up and address that, why we're making this change and why it's beneficial?
Mike Cody, Code Enforcement Officer. First, we were approached by the school department because they wanted their sign changed more rapidly because of the messages they have on there. Also, we had a comparison with other towns, and some of the other towns were changing every 5 or 6 seconds. So when we were at a minute, we thought that was fair. But again, comparing to other towns, this 5 or 6 seconds is a lot quicker than what we're allowing it to be at 10 seconds. So to me, it's not a flashing at 10 seconds, I don't believe. If you stand there and time it for 10 seconds, I don't think it's that quick where it would be, look like a flashing sign. Granted, there is a couple in town that I've noticed lately that is changing quite quickly. But all I need to do is go there and kind of time it myself. If it's quicker than what we allow, then they're in violation. But again, we were approached by the school. They wanted to have a more rapid change. And we looked into all the other comparisons, and I think that 10 seconds is fair for a change.
Well, I want to ask you first about Mike's point that you brought up, that there are other issues in other lines where it references that 1 minute. Do we need to go back and rewrite this a bit to address those issues?
If it was missed and skipped over, I would say yes.
Okay.
Because
So-
it all has to be consistent.
So do we have to go back to the planning board for another review by the planning board? Would that be correct? No?
No.
It's not a substantive change from what they
You just
proposed?
have to agree that you're going to make sure that you edit everything that's in here, 1
Right.
minute.
So they're all
go to 10
consistent.
seconds. And that's the purpose of what you're reading.
I want to see a marked-up version that says it's going to change,
Okay.
personally. I mean, that's the way we
To
do
you.
ordinances, so that we see all the editorial changes.
No, not-
May I ask another question?
Certainly.
What other towns or municipalities did we compare ourselves to?
I don't have the list here with me, but
Did you also check the accident rate around those signs?
no.
Curious to know what that is.
No,
as
we
well.
just looked at the speed of their
I mean,
sign
the whole
change.
reason we put it in a minute, whatever, 4 years ago or whatever it was, right, was because there was a large concern amongst the community and the council at the time that it was too distractive to traffic and would potentially cause issues. And I know the school would like to do things and show more information, but that's also a very high-traffic area. And if people are watching the sign more than they're watching the road, I just get concerned about that.
I certainly share your concerns about that. I've seen those signs be very distracting myself, so I sympathize with that.
I mean, just look at what happens at the light show and
Yeah.
Christmas time, right? With flashing lights. How many accidents we have. Well, it's a great show.
Certainly, Roger, go ahead.
Also, I think we ought to look at something in the ordinance. Why are these signs so bright? We have signs in town right now that are extremely, extremely bright. I mean, they're almost like a flash of lightning when they change. And I think that ought to be looked at more so than the speed of the sign changing.
I think that's certainly an interesting suggestion we should bring to the planning board, is to look at the
Exactly.
illumination, if we want to
I
have
mean,
limitations.
is there anybody else that wants to disagree that that sign going out of town is pretty bright? Almost looks like a low-hanging streetlight.
I guess if you want to stare at it, you can get distracted by it, but I mean, that's not the purpose. That's distracted driving. I mean, people talk on cell phones, it's the same deal.
Yeah,
It's
they
your
get-
fault if you stare at and go off the road, in my opinion, but whatever. I think another problem we had was that there were people complaining in town that the board out front wasn't giving them enough information. Jody took the time to change that, and she has all the meetings listed, what days they are of the month, and I know driving by here, there have been times that I've seen the same message over and over again, and I think people were seeing that, and they were thinking that was the only message on the board. So when it didn't change, they called and raised havoc here at the town office because we weren't reporting things. So in my opinion, if it helps us to report things, be it the school and what they're reporting, and us as a town office reporting, I think that informational part is very good. I mean, we have Chief Brooks here. Can you tell us anything about those signs and what happens around those signs? Are there more accidents caused in other towns, cities? Have you just done a study on it? All of the above. Like, no, I just gave you a lot, but,
Which question do you want to answer first?
well, all of them.
Yes.
I think one question you didn't ask is, I think the history on this, I think Councilor Bowie said about 4 years ago, this came up when the Super Furniture Store sign first came up, and there was an interim manager setting up there that, all of a sudden, if you recall, the state came in, Mike, and said, state rule, I think, was 20 minutes. some,
30 minutes, actually. Yep.
some ridiculous rule. And the council at that time reviewed it because we had a couple of businesses in town that were getting new technology in their signs and came to this 1 minute rule, is it?
Mhm.
And more signs have come in, and I think we're pretty light compared to some other towns, and especially if you go out of state, New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and see what's going on down there, but also the signs of the new technology, just like those HD TVs we have in our living rooms.
That's right.
LEDs, 3D, whatever you want, but as far as the brightness and clarity, that's today's technology. Again, I have to side with Gene.
Councilor Mason.
It's, when you drive a vehicle, you're responsible for
That's right.
your vehicle and what's in front of you and so forth. And if you're distracted by anything, be it a sign or cell phone, or whatever, that's a problem. And the state has developed a statute on distractions. So people are responsible to, and I said this in a report in regards to the light show up there at Janosco's. It's not their fault that these accidents are happening. The people, as they're driving along, decided it's more fun to look right or left than it is straight ahead. And by not looking straight ahead, they ended up getting in accidents. So you're responsible for your own actions, and you can't blame it on the sign.
Any further discussion from council? Anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this? Okay, ma'am. I'll start from the left and move across.
Kathy Jurgen. I have to agree with changing the sign because with the town sign, I could drive by here 100 times a day and never see anything different but the same thing over and over because it never changes. And when the school got theirs, I thought it was outstanding. It was like, wow, this is great. You can see what's going on. And then all of a sudden it stopped and the town stopped it. And I thought, well, that's awful. Now I can still drive by the school and see the same thing both ways. So I don't think 10, 20 seconds is going to change much. In fact, it's more communication.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dot.
Yeah, Dorothy Fitzgerald, resident of Lisbon Falls. Yeah, that's what I was going to do, is suggest a compromise, going to 15 or 20 seconds rather than 10. And I do have to disagree. I can drive by, and I see the changing signs all of the time here at the town office as well as in front of the school. The different meetings on different evenings and different, whatever meeting is going to be occurring on which evening and what time. So I see them changing all the time, and it does change rather quickly. So compromise sometimes is good.
Thank you. Don, would you like to speak?
Don Fellows from the Lisbon side of things. When the planning board looked at this, and it was brought before us because there were a number of signs that need to be regulated better than they are, we thought about a couple of things, and we were thinking about being not only town-friendly but business-friendly. And quite frankly, as Kathy just said, if you go by the same sign day after day, or you can go by and see the same thing all the time, then it isn't very effective. Since we have new technology, a 10-second turn, we were thinking, was not that often. It doesn't make it a light show. Granted, there are some signs in town that seem to be light shows and should not be by anybody's regulation. So those things need to be addressed. But when you look at the thing as a whole, Augusta's timing on signs is 5 seconds. Lewiston's is 6, and Thomaston is 4. And again, those signs are only applicable and can only be used on 196, not in other areas where it would be really distracting. So,
Thank you. Any further public comments? Now, if we were to change this to, say, 15 seconds, would we have to go back to the planning board for that if that's a more substantial change?
Good question. I don't know.
All right, well, how does the council want to proceed on this? Do we
We got to vote on it.
vote on it? Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the 10-second sign change.
I would second that motion with the editorial changes throughout the entire ordinance to be corrected.
Yep, I'll accept that as the motion is to accept it with the changes made throughout the entire
Counselor-
body of the item. Yes?
Chair, this would be a roll call vote,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And are you saying that everything with the 10 seconds is to be changed over, I mean,
Everything with the
1
1 minute will be changed to 10 seconds, yep, to
10
match the
seconds.
change here.
All right, I got
Or
it.
A, and then
Three places.
All right, that's your motion.
That-
Okay.
Yep. All right.
70.
Any further discussion of that motion?
Nope.
All right, we'll take a vote then. It'll be a roll call vote.
Yes, Counselor Bickford,
I'm for it, yes.
Counselor Bowie,
Yay?
Counselor Cody,
Yay.
Counselor La Rochelle, he's absent. Counselor Lunt,
Yes?
Counselor Mason,
Yes.
Counselor Pomelo,
Yes.
order passed, 6-0 for the first reading.
All right, next item?
Order 2011-42, Lisbon Comprehensive Plan Update Amendment.
Okay, you want to explain this again, Steve? Or you wanna-
These are changes that have to be made to the comprehensive plan before the ordinance changes, so they'll be in compliance. These are things that the planning board has worked on for quite a long period of time. We have representatives from that committee here, as well as Ferg Lee from AvCog, who helps draft some of this. If you have
Okay.
questions.
Go ahead, Mike.
I have two questions. One is, what types of businesses and everything can be put in the rural open space? One, I guess it is. And the other question I have is, what's the understanding or the reasoning behind why the planning board wants to make these changes from what was done in the original comprehensive plan?
Okay, do we have someone from the planning board here who'd like to explain that?
John Potvin, Lisbon. The reason, Mike, was we took a look at the comprehensive plan, which was drafted 2006, 2007, and we looked at where Lisbon was now. And in looking at that, we had, the maps came to the planning board for approval, the new zoning maps, and we had a public meeting at the Lisbon Community School last spring. And there was a lot of stuff on there. For example, Route 9 had a big strip of commercial up and down Route 9. There was also a spot up by Warslowski Brothers, and there were other things on there that were, the public wasn't really in favor of. So we had several meetings, several discussions with AvCog, discussions with landowners, specifically Mr. David Bowie, who's here tonight. And during all those discussions, we decided that, you know what, the information has changed. When the comprehensive plan was written initially, our understanding was, or my understanding of the situation was that they thought the turnpike access would be closer to Lisbon, which would have been a good spot for a commercial zone. Knowing now that the information has changed, the turnpike is much further up in Sabattis than it was, and with the public opposition to commercial, we decided to remove the commercial zone on Route 9 because, quite honestly, people didn't want it. There was also rural open space 2 is a new in the future land use maps. Discussions about the future land use or the rural open space zone led us to where we are today with changing some of the wording in the uses of the land and what its intent was, and that's how we ended up getting where we're at now as far as that goes. We had heavy involvement with Ferg Lee and John Maloney from AvCog. We had several workshops, several public hearings, and it actually took us a year to get what you have in front of you today.
So what type of businesses, if any, can go in this rural open space?
They would, I believe, they're conditional uses. I don't know the list off my head, Mike. I'm sorry.
Mike,
So my understanding of this is that it would completely prohibit residential subdivisions from going in that area at all. If you own land out there, you couldn't subdivide it, is that correct?
In rural open
In rural
space
open space
2,
two,
that's
right.
correct. You could break off a piece of your land, but you couldn't have a subdivision. The purpose of the rural open space 2 was to preserve agricultural lands. By allowing a subdivision in that zone, you basically, you void the reasoning behind that zone to begin with.
Mr. Roger?
What businesses could you have in that zone?
In the rural open space 2, again, I don't have the conditional use list in front of me, I'm not sure.
Um,
Oh, you do? Would you want me to bring this up to you?
Well, just a couple to highlight what kind of businesses you're looking at on Route 9 that are not permitted today.
This is the rural, are you talking about rural open space 2 or rural open space 1? Rural open space 2 is, can you show the map to them, Mike? Rural open space 2 is mainly along Upland Road. And a couple of the things that are allowed there would be conservation or recreational use. Timber harvesting.
These are low open space areas right here and down by Edgecombe Road. And those are reserved for more agricultural use, farmland uses. And low open space is also agricultural, but it will allow for certain uses under conditional uses at the planning board. And most of those are dealing, again, with agricultural landscaping type businesses. In other words, you're not gonna have an auto repair there or a gas station or anything like that. So, there are very limited uses, permitted uses in the open space 1, but there are a few that you can, for instance, Rick Mason just went through one up there on Route 9 under conditional use that allowed him to have a construction or
Excavation.
excavating
Now,
business.
may I add something here? If we're going to change these at this point, we have other businesses up and down Route 9 that would like to operate. Why don't we look at helping these people also to operate?
Are we talking about Route 9 or are we
Yeah.
talking about the rural open space 2?
We're talking about the rural open space is under conditional use, is for agricultural businesses.
That's the
Now,
rural open space 2, Roger.
The concern that I'm trying to bring forth is that we're making changes. Why don't we make the changes that we need to conform our other businesses in that area so they can also operate? And now that we're making the change, it's time to make the change now and not, we're making the rural open space 2 change, and there are also businesses on Route 9 that would like to work on Route 9 that would not be an issue to the environment or to the people in the area, and little changes at this time should probably be looked at to make the change while we're making these changes and not have to change it again.
I agree with you, but what we did to Route 9 was we removed the commercial zone, proposed commercial zone from the
Yes,
future
you did.
land use map.
Yes, you did.
We didn't change what's happening there now.
Exactly. But
This
the-
is the future land use map, this is not the zoning ordinance.
Right, but the future, future zoning map that we're looking at right now is still leaving businesses that would like to operate and that have been operating under the radar, that we could be helping and working with these people with a change at this time before we move forward.
Right. We've had several public hearings about this, Roger. If they didn't come forward, or if we don't know the businesses are operating, how could we address those issues?
Well, we all know that they're there, and they were,
I don't know.
Mike knows.
Gina, do you have a point?
John, I have a question. At one point, I inquired about some things on Route 9 also. We got our designation for our excavation business, but I inquired, and it was when Rosie was here, and I talked to Rosie in her office one day, and there's another designation that does allow business. They're not commercial businesses, but they're in-home businesses,
It was the home occupations.
home occupation. Now, would that apply on that strip? Like a beauty shop? I used that example before. And no, I'm not opening one, but
Yeah, home occupations are permitted and allowed in the rural open space one, but under a home occupation, you have to understand, it cannot be an outside sign saying, hey, I got a business here, you know, there's no outside signs and there's no traffic. In other words, you can use 25% of your home or an attached building to run this so-called business. And, but it is allowed to happen. But you can't have a full-blown sign out there saying you're running a business.
Well, is there another designation, though, that would allow a small business like a beauty shop? I say a beauty shop, but you know what I'm getting at, a hairdresser or whatever, a style salon. Is there another designation that would allow somebody to have a sign? It seemed as though there was something else that Rosie mentioned to me, and I can't remember what it.
It does say in our ordinance that if it is not a permitted use or a conditional use, then it is not, you know, you're not allowed to have it.
Actually,
So unless, go ahead.
sorry, during those discussions, there's a lot of feedback from the public. And actually, Mr. Cody, you brought this up, that when you moved in there because of the rural aspect of the area and you wanted to preserve that. You didn't want garages and all that stuff up and down Route 9. That was brought up during the LCS meeting, and we took that under consideration. We also discussed at length a home occupation 2, a subclass or a second class of zoning or whatever you want to call it. And actually, AvCog, I believe it was, Steve, is that correct? Yeah. Discouraged us from going that route.
Well, the problem is that whether I wanted it or not, it happened. And now the businesses are there. Obviously, the people of the town want these small businesses because they're using the businesses. So why don't we at this time look at that and help these people out and
And
get them conformed?
That's what I'm saying to you. We've looked at it for a year, and this is what we came up with. If you have other suggestions or more ideas, please come to the planning board and help us out. We would love it.
Well, the thing is, if we're gonna move forward, we're gonna make a change, and then we're gonna have to come back and go through the whole process. to make
I understand. I'm not averse to that. I want this right.
Right, and I would rather see it go back and make the changes to help the other businesses that are now currently on Route 9 that would be helped. Now, if the way that it is now, agricultural businesses per se are gonna help out, like Rick and Gina. I think that's great that they can operate their business under the way that it is. But there are other businesses on Route 9 that, with a slight change in the way that this is written, they would be able to operate and stay under the radar and don't be, in everybody's face, but allow them to operate their businesses. And they're up and down Route 9 the whole length of the corridor.
I believe those changes aren't to the future land use map. Those changes would be to the zoning ordinance when we send that to you, and the conditional uses that are in the zoning ordinance, not the future land use map.
Yeah, that was, you made a valid point, which I wanted you to try and explain a little more to us, is that this is a future land use map.
Correct.
Not our zoning ordinance.
This is not the zoning ordinance.
Explain the difference between the two so it helps everybody understand.
The comprehensive plan is basically, it's where Lisbon wants to be in 10 years, 15 years, whatever. And we can't make changes to the zoning ordinance that are out of compliance with the comprehensive plan. The way the comprehensive plan was written before, the future land use map, had a big section of commercial up and down Route 9. That section of commercial was not, the public didn't like it. I mean, they flat out hated it, to be honest with you. And we had some heated meetings here, we had a heated meeting at LCS, and being public servants, we took that under advisement and decided to remove that commercial zone from Route 9 and make some changes to the rural open space 2 future land use maps. While that was happening, we've also been reviewing all the ordinances, but we can't send the ordinance to you, the new zoning ordinance, until the comprehensive plan has been amended. And when we do send the zoning ordinance to you, we can address Roger's concerns about businesses and conditional uses that are valid in that zone. But they're two separate animals. This is one thing. The zoning ordinance is the next step, which someday you guys will get, but we're still working on it.
What my concern was that when we do start to do the ordinances, that we don't have another block in our way with a future land use map that will not allow us to write our ordinance that we'd like to write.
And we've been working very hard to get that correct. We've had, I can't even count how many number of workshops we've had to make sure that we get this right, and when we send it to you, it's the way it should be.
Another question I'd like to bring up on this. You are, with this future land use map, you're gonna make a large parcel on Route 196 commercial.
Right.
And that's right over the wellhead. The question that I bring is, who in town is gonna be responsible for the wellhead protection? It would be the CEO, am I correct?
I believe that's
Okay.
correct.
Now, if our CEO happens to be questionable, and we know what that can be like with our last tax session, we can do a lot of damage to that wellhead.
That's right, and I will bring the same thing I brought to you before. If a tractor-trailer full of oil spills right there, you can do a lot of damage too. We can't see the future. We can make sure that the ordinance is written properly and that it's enforced. Nobody here can say what's going to happen 10 years, 20 years from now. All we can do is our best and hope that it gets enforced and ensure if it's not getting enforced, then the town needs to act and find someone that will enforce it.
That's what concern I have, is what's going to happen in the future.
And I think everybody here, you'd be foolish, everybody here has that concern.
That's right.
And we should all be concerned about it. But we can't stick our heads in the sand and leave whatever 70, 80 acres undeveloped when it's prime real estate. And if you've
Yeah, but you can use prime real estate for other sources besides commercial.
You can, but you could have, and no offense to Mr. Carville across the street who works on a tractor trailer, if he pulls in there with a rig full of gasoline and that thing leaks, he's, what, 50, 75 feet from the wellhead? What's to stop that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, the ordinance is designed to protect the wellhead,
But
and
that's
we
50
need someone to enforce the ordinance.
Right. That's 50 to 75 feet away from the aquifer. But if you're setting directly above
No,
it,
he sits on it. He's across the street from the well on Moody Road.
that's directly, that's a questionable decision also.
No, he doesn't drive that. I'm just saying if he did.
Right. These are, I can't stress the importance of taking care of that wellhead enough in this town to these people, that this is our only water supply, because our wells will nowhere near take care of the water demand in Lisbon without the aquifer.
Right, and I don't know if Mr. Lee wants to speak about the wellhead protection, but that's coming your way too, and we've spent months working on that as well, to make sure it's
And
the way it should
I
be.
also worked with these gentlemen during the comprehensive plan back in 2007. And we were specifically, over and over and over, stay away from the aquifer. Do not do anything over your aquifer. And then all of a sudden, we are a few years later, going to develop over the aquifer, and it's a concern. And it's a concern that I'm going to continue to shout as long as I'm a counselor, because I think it's something that is very, very important to the townspeople, more so than they'll ever realize if we lose it.
John, I have a question on that note about what's the time frame you're looking at for getting us the wellhead protection ordinance? How long?
It's in Roger Terrio's hands right now. I'm not sure what the time frame is on that. I mean, we sent it to him in November.
Okay. Because I would like it to be, done as soon as we can to go along with any change to the actual zoning.
Yeah, actually, it has to go before the zoning.
Okay,
The way the
good.
zoning's written, and you have to get the wellhead first.
Okay, so nothing will change with regards to making that a commercial zone until we've actually got that ordinance there for the wellhead protection done, correct?
I believe
Right, as you're saying, we wouldn't be
I
able to do it.
believe that's true.
Right, we'd have to do the wellhead protection first. Any further questions?
I'd make a motion to accept the first reading.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
It's a roll call.
A roll call vote, you're right, yes. Roll call, sorry.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Bowie?
Yay?
Counselor Cody?
Nay.
Counselor La Rochelle is absent. Counselor Lunt?
Yes?
Counselor Mason?
Yes.
And Counselor Pomelo?
Yes.
Order passed 5-0.
5-1, I believe.
5-1, it is 1, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, next item, Twyla?
Order 2011-43, Board of Assessment Review Ordinance. First reading, roll call vote.
This is just some clarification, adjustments in some of the language that Roger suggested we have.
Can you explain it at all? It seems confusing to me.
I'm not sure I
A
can.
lot of numbers and
Like you're
dates.
repealing two things and then putting something back. You're saying Division 3, Chapter 2 is repealed, and then the adoption by the council on March 16th, Division 10 as Division 12, on March 16th, 2010, as Division 12, Chapter 2, Sections 2-571 through 2585, hereby repealed. Then it says the assessment review ordinance adopted March 16th, 2010, under Division 12 of Chapter 2 of the code is adopted as Chapter 3 of the Chapter 2.
Unless I have it in front of me, I can't tell you.
Without the changes, I mean,
And you can certainly, we'll bring this forward to you.
Yeah.
You should have the documentation of what the ordinance actually reads.
We have the option, we can just table this if we want to wait and try to get more information or get
That's a good
some
idea.
advice
I would
from
like to,
Terry.
just so I can understand what we're doing.
Okay. I agree with that. I don't want to run ahead without knowing what we're doing here. Okay, do we need to vote to table? Do I need to vote on tabling it?
I would just move it
Yes.
to another agenda item.
Okay, yep. Move it to the next agenda, or our next full meeting? Okay. All right, next item, Twyla?
Under other business, high school council representative.
This was requested by Counselor Larchelle. There was some discussion in the last few meetings about looking at having a high school representative sit with the council, just as a learning, and possibly to hear the concerns of our young people. But that was something that Vern wanted the council to discuss.
Okay,
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I do too.
I do too. It's
Have
definitely
any
something.
volunteers?
I can't be on high school, but
I'm baffled by this, I really am, and I'll tell you why. I think the idea of having somebody with the council, there's no problem with that. But we shut the public off, audience participation, and now we're gonna bring somebody in from the school. We do it with this hand and take it away with this hand, and what are we thinking
Roger, we
Well-
haven't taken anything away from the public as of yet.
as of yet, but we're working towards it?
Why
And-
would you want to
Well, the thing of
hurt
it
a
is,
young person from learning? Why?
you don't want to hurt a young person from learning, but why would you want to stop your public from speaking? You know, we're going on both sides of the same issue.
I don't know, I think it's a good idea. I think we
think it's a
should
great
go
learning
forward with it.
I think it's great to bring this in, but it's just the opposite of what we just said earlier in the meeting about getting rid of public communication.
Right, well, we haven't decided anything yet on that, Roger. We have to discuss that, and, we can bring forward other proposals. If you have other ideas, I think we'd all be open to ideas. None of us have a perfect solution to that.
Mark, can I say something?
Certainly.
We, Topsom, at my trail club down Topsom, we have a student representative, and it really, it's very, very interesting. They have a lot of good ideas, and it works out very well. We've always had one. So I have no qualms about it at all.
I'd certainly support that.
I have a nomination for one, if that's possible.
I'll work with the superintendent to get some kind of procedure or process, so
Yeah.
we can have something more to look at, language. Okay?
All right, sounds
We're all
good.
in favor of that.
All right, next item, Twyla?
Is police department presentation.
This is something that I've asked the police department to do. They did this same presentation during the orientation. It was very insightful, really showed a different thing that sometimes the public and everybody doesn't get to see of what goes on in the town of Lisbon. So David has put together a project or a presentation for us.
It's coming.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. You're about to witness our first reading of our 2010 Calls for Service presentation. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Andrea Tapley. Andrea is a part-time administrative assistant with the police department. Also, she is holding a part-time grant position as a crime analyst. So we'll move forward, and we'll go right to the slide on our mission. The police department's mission statement reads as follows: in partnership with the community and respecting the rights and dignity of the persons we serve, the Lisbon Police Department has as its mission and goal of providing to the residents of and visitors to the town of Lisbon, in an appropriate and organized manner, professional law enforcement services using advanced police practices and resources. And if I can reiterate what the manager stated earlier, if I could ask that 3 of the counselors who did attend the orientation in January, some of this is going to be repetitive to you, so please don't yawn or anything like that. Try to appreciate that. The next slide is a map. We're going to see several maps in this presentation. All of this comes from our IMC software program. We do have a mapping component in that. This first map is the Assist Citizens calls. 538 Assist Citizens calls were received by the department in 2010. To give you an example of what Assist Citizen calls are, they're lockouts from home, your apartment, from cars, lifeline calls, tenant-landlord disputes, social media complaints, children out of control, parents requesting assistance. Just in March alone, we've had calls on that with children ranging from 6 years old to 26 years old that the parents have called us on to assist them in controlling them.
How many assisted calls, please?
Pardon?
How many?
538. The next map is the crimes against people calls. Crimes against people are your assaults, your aggravated and simple assaults, criminal threatening, kidnapping, robbery, and all sex offenses. There were 93 crimes against people calls received last year, which, as the slide indicates, and you'll see later on in the presentation, that was an 8% increase over 2009's numbers. Next slide will be the crimes against property calls. Crimes against property include your burglaries, attempted burglaries, motor vehicle thefts, larcenies, your vandalisms. Vandalism in Maine is called criminal mischief. Forgery, fraud, all crime against property type calls. In 2010, we had 239 of these calls that the officers responded to, as you can see, at various locations around town, which was a 7% increase over 2009's numbers. One of the things I feel I need to highlight here is burglaries. And everybody gets to watch TV, CSI, NCIS, every night, every channel. Real life in Maine is a little different than the 60 Minutes Commit It and Solve It on TV. One example I'll give is that on January 5th of 2010, we received a burglary, theft, criminal mischief call from a owner, single-family residence in Lisbon Falls. They'd been broken into while they were working that day. Over $10,000 in personal property was stolen, and there was over $500 damage done to the house. We responded, and the detective collected physical evidence at the scene. Some of that physical evidence included DNA evidence. That DNA evidence was taken to the Maine State Police Crime Lab. Further interviews were conducted during the course of the investigation Modus operandi were shared and reviewed with other agencies statewide and New England-wide. Suspects were determined in this case. This case did become a New England case. People involved in it, we had reason to believe, were operating in other New England states. Again, this case was reported to us on January 5th of 2010, and that's when the investigation began. The DNA was taken, as I said, to the crime lab. On December 21st of 2010, 11 months and 16 days after the initial burglary, the Maine State Police Crime Lab notified us that they had obtained a DNA profile on the evidence that we'd taken to them. Now, I just want to emphasize that to you again. This is 11 months and 16 days, not 60 minutes as you see on TV. This is real life in Maine. And after that DNA profile was obtained, the detective then had to obtain a search warrant to extract DNA samples from the suspect. The suspect was transient and was finally located in Gardner. Surprise, surprise, wouldn't cooperate. But the DNA was extracted and the sample was taken to the crime lab. In February of this year, we received notification from the crime lab 13 months after the event that a DNA match had been made. And that case is now awaiting prosecution in Superior Court. On the flip side of that, sometimes they do go quicker. We had another residential burglary just this month, March, last month. We just moved into another month. And another residential burglary in Lisbon. 21 guns were stolen out of this house. We notified the owner of the property. They were not aware that the crime had occurred yet. So what I'm portraying here is some of these cases take a long time, and some of them were very fortunate that they're solved very quickly. In this case with the 21 weapons, 6 were recovered, which led us to the owner, who then checked his area of the house, and sure enough, 21 weapons missing. So we're still looking for the other weapons, but we do have the perpetrator on this case. Moving on to alarm responses. Alarm responses, we responded to 177 alarms being burglar alarms and hold-up alarms, both business and residential. There'll be another slide where I highlight fire calls. Fire alarms are not part of this alarm response call map. But again, it shows you alarms all over town, and every alarm has to be responded to as if it's the real thing. And 99% of them are false alarms. However, if you recall the TD Bank, that wasn't a false alarm, and if you recall Rite Aid Pharmacy, that wasn't a false alarm. And we were fortunate to get all of the perpetrators in those 2 cases. Sex crimes. Your next slide is the number of sex crimes in Lisbon last year, 40. Sex crimes include child abuse, which is child sexual abuse, rape, and again in Maine, rape is called gross sexual assault, prostitution, and child pornography. We are unfortunately starting to experience an increase in child pornography complaints. Again, the internet, social media, it's problematic. We have a current case that our detectives are working on, and lo and behold, Maine State Police walked in the door and to talk to us about a case they were working on, and it's the same perp. So they are scattered around town, and we deal with them. The next slide is pictures of your lifetime sex offender registrants who reside in Lisbon. We have 12 lifetime sex offenders. For the counselors that were able to attend the previous orientation, we had a map that had located those, and in building this PowerPoint, that particular data would not come into our map module. We don't know why, so instead of dots on a map, we're showing you faces on a screen. The next slide is the names of these individuals and their addresses. And again, these are lifetime registrants, and why they're lifetime, that's based on the severity of the crime and the age of the victim. And most generally, if the victim is 14 years of age or under, they're a lifetime registrant. The next slide is the 10-year registrants. We have 8 10-year registrants that live in Lisbon as well. And the final slide on sex offenders are those that either work in or receive mail in Lisbon, but do not live in Lisbon. All total, we currently have 26 registered sex offenders living in the town of Lisbon. The next slide is the motor vehicle accident calls that the department received in 2010. We responded to 261 reported accidents. Of that 261, there was actually only 160 that by state standards, either $1,000 or more in property damage or personal injury, were reportable, that we would have to send a report to the state. But the department did respond to 261 motor vehicle accidents last year. Just some pictures here of different accidents over time. The center picture is of particular interest to a number of us in this community. Many people in this room, I suspect, know the operator of that vehicle. His wife works for the school department. That case went to grand jury today, and the operator of the offending vehicle has been indicted on 2 felony counts of OUI and driving to endanger. So that case is moving forward. The operator of that vehicle was trapped in that vehicle for quite some time, and is, to my understanding, is still in a wheelchair today. The next slide is the disorderly and domestic calls. 248 disorderly and domestic calls we responded to last year. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We get our fair share of disputes, and be it spousal or boyfriend, girlfriend, or significant other, or whatever it may be. And for some reason, sometimes they get physical, and if they become physical and there's an assault, it's most generally an automatic arrest in Maine. So we're pretty active on those type of complaints. Next slide is animal-related calls. I put this up here. That shows 476 animal-related calls, and they range anything from any dog, cat, cruelty complaint, injured complaint, dangerous animal, loose, rabid, even your wildlife complaints, squirrels, raccoons, skunks, owls, bats. He does them all, Jeff Cooper. And as I explained pointed out last time to the counselors, this is just Lisbon. Remember that this particular position, he deals with 3 towns. He also is, we share his workload with Sabattis and Bowdoin. Bowdoin, I believe, last year had 90 calls, and off the top of my head, I don't remember what Sabattis totaled. But that's a busy operation. The next slide is for the fire department. I like to stay in good standing with the fire department, so I thought I'd put a map up that would show their calls for service. But again, these are just the fire calls. Well, that's not true. They are fire calls or other calls, but the fire calls include your brush fires, your auto fire, structure fire, any other fire. Your fire alarms are on this as well. And also on this are your flooded basements and all those other type things that people think the fire department should help them with. And what's not on this map, because I do know that their actual calls, I believe, was 313. There's the actual call. What's not showing on this map would be your mutual aid calls. That's because mutual aid takes them out of town. So those calls would not be showing on here. But, and I'm sure there's others not shown. I'm having a brain cramp because it's fire, but.
Duty officer, that type of stuff.
Yeah, those kind of things. But anyway, and the other point on this that you need to remember is that all of these calls that you're seeing, everything goes through the comm center. Our comm center dispatches everything you see tonight. So that you just have to keep that in mind. The next slide are the 911 calls that the comm center received. And again, these could be for any reason somebody dials 911. Our 911 calls are transferred to us primarily from Androscoggin PSAP. Secondary level of calls we receive would be coming from the Maine State Police Gray PSAP. Maine State Police Gray transfers the cell 911 calls that are received. We also received 911 transfer calls from Saginaw PSAP and LA 911 PSAP. And if you recall, 5-6 years ago, we were a PSAP, but the PUC at that time reduced the number of PSAPs, and they're, again, looking at that to do that again. Androscoggin County is being targeted because they currently have 2 PSAPs. The next slide is the... Pardon?
533. 533.
The next slide is, you've seen this before. I put this in reports in the past. The calls for service, and again, calls for service are everything that goes through the comm center, be it officer initiated or citizen initiated or other department initiated, a lot of which were on the maps. Every call that that requires some type of police action. And I start with 2003 because that's the first full year of our IMC software program. Prior to 2003, we had a different software program. We actually started in mid-2002. So 2003 was the first full year. It's interesting to see here that, we've gone from 9,300 calls, and last year we were at 11,164, and in 2010 we had 11,008. And people are calling the comm center for 11,008 reasons. It's a busy operation. But again, these are both officer-initiated and public and other outside agency-initiated type calls. Next slide is, I've talked about this before, and I don't know if some folks don't know it when I mention it in the past. Some folks do know it, and some folks don't care to know it. But Lisbon is the 25th largest town in the state of Maine by population, and that is by the 2010 census. Our status didn't change in that. There are other towns in the 2000 census that were more than us in 2000 that went under us, and vice versa, but we stayed pretty stable, and we're still in the 25th range of 433 towns in Maine. And by the Department of Public Safety's Crime in Maine 2009 publication, municipal police departments in Maine have a ratio of 1.93 officers per 1,000 population. And with that ratio, if we were using that ratio, Lisbon would have 18 full-time police officers. Staffing past and present, from 2002 to 2008, Lisbon had 16 full-time police officers. And then in 2008, that was reduced to 15. And then in 2010, it was further reduced to 14. That 14 is 14.3% reduction in our police officer manning levels from 2008, and it's also 28.6% less than the state of Maine ratios. In police service, that's significant. And again, I've said it many times, it's becoming difficult and it becomes a safety issue, but trying to make the police continue to do more with less. We are reducing our ability, yet you can see our requests in the jobs is increasing. Lisbon ranks 57th in Maine in police officer population ratio. 57th in Maine for the 25th largest community in Maine. Trends, again, the police department budget and staffing are being reduced over time. Crimes against people increased 8% in 2010 compared to 2009, and we experienced a 47% increase in 2009 compared to 2008. And I'm not 100% comfortable with that number of 47%. There is an increase, but again, I think there's a software piece there, but it was a very significant increase. And the reality of it is that we had a large increase in sex offenses in 2009 compared to 2008. Crimes against property increased 7% in 2010 over 2009, and is at 1% increase in 2009 over 2008. And again, calls for service have increased 18%. And again, the point here is just what I said earlier. Everything, our workload is increasing, yet the ability to do the job is decreasing. Department's community policing proactive initiatives. Our drug awareness resistance education, which everyone is more familiar with, DARE. 2010 marked the 24th year of Lisbon DARE. Lisbon was the first department in Androscoggin County to provide DARE, and one of the first, I believe, 5 or 6 in the state of Maine to provide the DARE program. And we continue to do that to this day. School resource officers Darren Estes and Renee Bernard, along with Detective Bernie McAllister, teach the DARE curriculum to all the 5th and 7th grade students in Lisbon. In the 5th grade, Officer Estes provides 16 visits to each 5th grade class in the DARE curriculum. I do not know how many 5th grade classes there are this year. It seems like that number changes every year. And Officer Bernard provides 10 visits for every 7th grade class. So the DARE curriculum is quite lengthy and detailed and takes a lot of their time. The Lisbon Community Policing Advisory Group, LCPAG, has been an active committee for the past 16 years and has developed ordinance language for drug-free safety zones, noise ordinances, adult entertainment, canine waste, pawn shop ordinance. The community policing group, brain cramp. We'll move on. What I was going to say with the community policing group is past boards of selectmen and councils have delegated certain jobs to this group, some of those which I listed. Also, that group was involved in the PSAP research, study, and recommendation to the council 5 or 6 years ago. And they're an active group, and they get a lot of work done. Again, those ordinances I listed, most of that language came out of that group's work. The Lisbon the Lisbon Education, Employment, and Delinquency Program, LE²AD, the LEAD program. LEAD was initiated in 2002. I have a note here to read something. There we go. The LEAD program, which began in 2002, supports at-risk youth, helping to provide the tools necessary to complete their education and create improved economic opportunities. Second chance opportunities for dropouts and at-risk teens has declined in recent years. This critically important program, through the effective collaboration of the Lisbon Police Department, the Lisbon School Department, and the Maine Department of Juvenile Services and 7 area businesses, is changing the lives of at-risk youths in Lisbon. And I want to highlight those businesses that participate in this program. Aubuchon Hardware, Maine Recycling, the Credit Union, Graziano's, Dingley Press, Town of Lisbon, and Sam's Italian Sandwich Shop. Again, the kids that take part in this program, as you can read there, are potential low-risk offenders or have become low-risk offenders or are involved in the criminal justice system. And the likelihood of them receiving a high school diploma is rather slim. So we get them into this program. They're counseled and basically followed. And we have a 50% success rate in the kids that have gone through this and obtaining their GEDs. We've had some kids that have gone on to college. And I believe we have about 60 to 70% success rate in getting the kids that have been involved in this program a job. So the Maine Department of Corrections is very interested in this program. As a matter of fact, we on the second year of a 2-year grant on this program. And I know some people are into grant numbers. This is a grant that was provided to us from the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention, Office of Justice Program, U.S. Department of Justice. Grant number is 2007-JF-FX-0037. We're in the second year of a 2-year award. Another proactive initiative is our Citizens Police Academy. The Citizens Police Academy provides community members an inside look at the police department and all facets of law enforcement. One of the key political things seems to be today when people are running for office is transparency. Transparency, this is about as transparent as you can get. These people come in and they see how it is, why it is, and what becomes of it. As a matter of fact, some of them wish they were able to have more training. We keep this to a level where we just touch the surface because we do this over 10 nights, over 10 weeks, 3 hours a night, and you figure the basic police academy is 18 weeks full time. So that's what we're trying to do. We're just giving them a touch. The volunteers, going back to the CPA, 2011 is our 4th CPA. To date, the current CPA is in its 5th week, halfway through, and they have 12 participants in this year's CPA. The previous CPAs, 08, 09, and 10, we had 42 participants that graduated in those programs. We also provide what we call a CPA 2. We've done that we did that in 09 and 10, and the CPA 2 is a full day of actual hands-on. And we do, on these past CPAs, we've done scenarios on OUIs. We allow the CPA student they make the stop, they go through the entire process of getting the person out of the car and everything you do on the roadside for an OUI. We also do felony stops with them, and a felony stop is when a weapon is drawn and we do accident reconstruction with them, and we also do domestic cases with them. Let them respond and go into a room where a husband and wife are having a domestic dispute. And it's worked out quite nicely, and everybody really likes it a lot. One thing, and I did mention this to the 3 councils that attended the January orientation, every class we've had to date, people in that class have said that it ought to be a requirement for elected officials in this town to go through that class. And I know we can't make that a requirement, but I just thought I'd bring that up. The Volunteers and Police Services Program, VIPS, their current program, which has been ongoing for a couple of years now and has received recognition from Androscoggin United Way, I believe it was, is the community outreach program. They contact over 60 seniors and shut-ins weekly. They come in at 1, 2, 3 different times during the week to make daytime and or nighttime calls so they can touch base with everybody. We've helped seniors with things such as, this was originally started a couple of years ago, back when the first time the oil scare came about and oil was going through the roof, and we were concerned because we do have a large senior population in town that people would be making choices, oil or medication and so forth. And we didn't want anybody to go without whatever their needs were, and a lot of the seniors are very proud individuals and won't ask for help. So we reached out to them. We've helped a number. We have one funny story with that is that we even had a senior whose toilet broke. And her toilet had been broke for 2 weeks. And she finally told the caller one day about this, and the caller contacted the housing authority where this senior lives, and made some other contacts, and then the next week when the caller contacted that senior, the toilet had been fixed the next day. So those are the kind of little things. It seems little, but it's to them when it's a big thing, and again, we're there to help them. Also, our VIPs have helped us on Moxie Days and last year's Harvest Festival as well. It's a good group of people. This coming week, as a matter of fact, this coming Friday, the VIPs are sponsoring a dinner for the seniors at Woodside Apartments. The Law Enforcement Explorer Post. This is a group of young students, high school age primarily right now, that's associated with Exploring Learning for Life career education. It's for young men and women age 14 if they completed 8th grade or 15 to 20 years of age. Its purpose is to provide experiences to help young people mature and become responsible and caring adults. Explorer posts can specialize in a variety of career skills. Of course, ours just happens to be a law enforcement Explorer post. Exploring programs are based upon 5 areas of emphasis: career opportunities, life skills, citizenship, character education, and leadership experience. And again, one of the directions we're heading with our Explorer post this coming summer is there is a Explorer Week at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, and we are working very hard to make sure that Lisbon's Explorers get the opportunity to attend that week at the Criminal Justice Academy. The Maine Regional Community Justice Coalition, MRC-JC, this is a board that is comprised of members representing law enforcement, prevention, intervention advocates, and community members, all from Androscoggin, Saginaw, and Lincoln counties. I chair this committee. This is the committee that was developed, for some of you will recall, I used to use the term weed and seed. This was the committee that was developed after the Department of Justice weed and seed grants expired about 2 or 3 years ago for these 3 counties. We are still working to go statewide. We did receive a grant from the Department of Justice, which provides statewide crime analyst capability. We have 2 I say we, it's not the MRCJC. There are 2 full-time analysts, and Andre Topley is the part-time analyst. One full-time analyst is home-based out of Lisbon PD. She lives in Topsom, but she uses our PD as her home base for the southern Maine. The second full-time analyst is home-based out of Penobscot County, SO in Bangor, and takes care of everything Bangor North. And they develop bulletins in law enforcement that go out twice a week, 3 times a week for the law enforcement, and once a week for the business community. And there's a lot of work in that. We're in the 2nd year of the 2-year grant on that. And that, again, that's a US DOJ grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, grant number 2009 SDB 90015. Go ahead. The recognition, I want to remind, and many of you do recall, that in 2010, Officer Ryan McGee was recognized as the American Legion Officer of the Year. Received his award at the annual American Legion ceremony in Bangor. Recently, Detective McAllister, Detective Tapley, and Sergeant Stewart's in the room here this evening, will be recognized by the United States Attorney's Office for their work in the Androscoggin bank robbery case, U.S. v. Randy Krogh and U.S. v. Denise Krogh. That case, as you know, has been resolved, and those people have been found guilty and are doing what people who are found guilty do. And the U.S. Attorney is recognizing our officers on this case, and this is a unique case. Again, we're very fortunate. It was excellent work on their part, and we were able to respond to that case, collect evidence, do a thorough investigation, and within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, the bank robber was in custody. So that was an excellent case, and the U.S. Attorney realizes it and is going to thank them for their work. Another piece of recognition is the Law Enforcement Challenge, the National Law Enforcement Challenge. I made this available to the counselors earlier in January. The department participated in the 2009 National Law Enforcement Challenge. This is a highway safety initiative. Federal standards and state standards, they look at our policies and guidelines, our public information education, the department's training, the incentives and recognition within the department, and the enforcement activity of the department. And in 2009, your Lisbon Police Department placed 2nd in the state of Maine in this category for the National Law Enforcement Challenge. In 2008, we were 3rd. Small agencies, Lisbon is classified as a small law enforcement agency, and as it turned out, the small law enforcement agencies outdid all the big boys. York PD came in first, and York PD in 2008 came in first in the nationwide event. So Maine is, we're pretty proud of, we're on top of highway safety in Maine. That's a very important piece of our business. And again, knock on wood, every time we say it, we were saying it today when we were talking about it, we've been very fortunate that we haven't had a fatal accident in this town for 4 to 5 years now. And there are some communities in this town that fatal accidents are very commonplace. So that's, again, I like to believe that's because of our proactive traffic enforcement and our education programs. And one of the neat things on the incentives piece is that we do a incentive for the kids in town in the summertime. If they're seen with wearing their helmet while they're riding their bicycles, we'll give them a certificate to go get a free ice cream at one of the local ice cream places. So that's small, but it's big. And that's I believe, the final slide. No? Oh, I was wrong. I have too many pieces of paper here. Okay. Other pieces of recognition are the Lisbon officers have been recognized by numerous organizations, i.e. the American Heart Association, the Maine Chiefs Police Association, Maine Association of Police, and Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and also the Maine Bureau of Highway Safety. Again, this is for a wide variety of reasons on the recognition, from life-saving. If you recall, a year ago, American Heart was in here and did a life-saving presentation to two of our officers. We found out just today that apparently that there's a group that wants to make another presentation on another life-saving event that the officers were involved in. We've had bravery awards given to Lisbon's officers for different events that they've had to deal with over time. Mothers Against Drunk Driving have recognized an officer on the department as being very strong in OUI enforcement. And as a matter of fact, he's excellent when it comes to OUI enforcement, does a very good job. And again, the Maine Bureau of Highway Safety has given us recognitions in the past. This is the last slide. Good. You got to remember, we didn't do a dry run on this, so we didn't know how long it would take. Other recognition is you have all of your Lisbon police officers are also sworn Androscoggin and Saginaw deputies, and some have been or are currently sworn as special agents for MDEA, ICE, DEA, Central Maine Violent Crimes Task Force, and Deputy U.S. Marshals. Another high mark that our department has is the K-9 team of Officer Jason St. Pierre and Dex. They are recognized in the state as one of the better drug K-9 teams. They've been used to do searches in several county jails, numerous high schools across the state, and called to assist MDEA, DEA, again, Central Maine Violent Crimes Task Force, Maine State Police, and many other agencies, many other local municipal agencies as well. Another point I didn't put on here is that because of the work of that K-9 team, I am in hopes that there'll be some news forthcoming on another forfeiture that may be headed our way, involving an assist with the Maine State Police on the Turnpike. So that's the last slide for the presentation. Again, it's just a quick, I don't know how long it took, but it's a quick overview of activities for 2010. And I'd like to end by, I hope that all of you have take the opportunity in the room. I hope all of you take the opportunity to read the managerial report that comes out monthly. All the departments do participate in that and provide reports to the manager, and then they are then published on the internet and are available for everyone to read, to see what's going on. I'm going to read the final paragraph of my March report. The March report has not gone online yet, so to me, it's important that I bring this out. And again, it's talks about an incident that took place in Lisbon just last month. Early in the month of March, the town's public safety departments responded to a horrible fire on Summer Street. A tragic loss of lives occurred that day, and the family and town has mourned together. The public safety family pulled together during and after that event in coping with personal, emotional, and psychological issues. Sometimes people forget that police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical responders are human too. They are all highly trained in their specific services, and when needed to respond to an emergency, they do so without hesitation, and many times in the face of danger to themselves. They get the job completed like a well-oiled machine. However, they are not machines. They are people just like you, with friends and families. They have emotions. This tragic loss of lives tore deeply into many responders. A number have attended counseling and are all coping and healing. All public safety responders know and accept that their number one priority is to save lives. When lives are lost, many feel they've failed. No officer, firefighter, or EMS responder failed that day. Like previously mentioned, well-oiled machine, they took every available action they could. However, time was not on their side. We in public safety will never forget that day in our history, and all of us will continue to do what we have chosen, to be police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel, serving our community, our home, our friends, and our families. I am extremely proud of Lisbon's public safety family, all of them, and I thank them for their service to the community and the personal sacrifices they make along the way. And I'm sure that 99.9% of the Lisbon community feels this way as well. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. All right, next item, Twyla?
Is C, Town Manager's Report.
Just a quick update for the public, and the congressional staff has been visiting the office. We put out some feelers for some assistance in looking at some grants or financial opportunities for our community track and other projects that we're looking at. They've been excellent to respond, to come in and talk, and it's really nice to see. Again, back to the track committee is at a point where we'll be looking for filling out applications for a $100,000 grant. This is a project that's been going on for the last 2 years, and we're at a position where we would like to move forward, but we'll do so carefully, and we'll bring you up to date once we have some things in place. Public safety, I attended, and as did many, the fire department banquet. It's an extremely nice affair. They do a great job in recognizing the work that this group does, and it was nice to see. And thank the fire department for the invitation. Wayne Ricker, our solid waste department head, submitted his report for 2010 to the state planning office, and they always have had a very high rate of recycling. This past year was 57.2% rating, which is extremely high, and they do a great job up there, and thank them for that. That's all I have.
All right. Okay, next item, Twyla?
Is audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone at the podium and state your name and address for the audience here and at home.
Mr. Fillmore, if you'd like to take the podium.
This is Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. First of all, I want to thank Chief Brooks for an outstanding presentation. I think that the 14 police officers that he has are doing an outstanding duty, an outstanding job, and very professional. However, I am concerned about the police department's budget. I did a little survey and contacted some of the other communities in the area that have a similar population to us. Cape Elizabeth has a $1.2 million budget. They have 12 people in their department. Now, I don't have an accurate account of everybody in the police department, so I don't know what the total amount of personnel are. But this I'm giving you for figures are the total that covers in their budget. Now, these figures I got from either the finance officer of the towns or the comptroller. So I'm going to take that as good to go. So Cape Elizabeth, like I said, had $1.1 million budget. They have a total of 12 people in their police department. Gorham has a $1.5 million budget, and they have 4,000 more people than we do. And they have 25 people total in their police department. Topsom has a $1.2 million budget, and they have a total of 17 people. So I understand that we're doing a remarkable job with our officers. They're doing a good job. But I think we have some support elements that we could do some budget cutting. And we need to take a better look at those positions in the support element of these people. Again, Chief, I think it's a great job that your officers are doing. Okay, I'm just saying that I think that the budget for the police department is a little high. I think that we're having a hard time right now with our budgets. We're going up every year. We're going up more and more on our spending. The council has to do something about the spending because that's where it's killing us. If the council does not stop all of this, we're going to lose everything. And I think the council needs to take a real hard look at holding the expenses for the town down, which will hold our taxes down. If our taxes go up another year, I don't know what we're going to do about it. But we had people here in the hallway for 3 sessions upset. The whole town was outraged by the tax increase last year. If we suffer another increase this year, we're going to have to find an alternative to doing the budget. There's got to be a better way to save our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. I do just want to make a comment, though, that our problem really, I think, has been not an increase in our expenditures, but we've been losing revenues year after year, and that's really where we've been hit on, where it's been transferred to the local property taxes from loss of revenues and excise taxes and the state revenue sharing, especially, and the school side has also lost a lot of money there. All right. Any further comments from the public? Dot, take the podium.
Dorothy Fitzgerald, a resident of Lisbon Falls. I'm on the Budget Committee. I did miss one meeting. The town of Lisbon is, in the budget proposal, 1.75% wage increase for all town employees. Times are tough. With my Social Security check, I got a notice that my Social Security wasn't going up this year because the cost of living adjustment had not gone up. So how can you justify a 1.75% cost of living increase when the government says there's no cost of living increase? I dispute that because my cost of living has gone up considerably. On top of that, I understand that there are 6 employees that are getting a $10,000 wage increase over and above their 1.75% wage increase. I'm bringing this up now because this is being televised and a lot of people watch it on TV. We need a revaluation. The town manager is looking for a way to get $320,000 for a complete revaluation. Now, giving town employees an additional $10,000 wage increase over and above just does not make fiscal sense to me. It does not make sense to me. last year, I complained loud and clear about the money that was being spent on continuing education. We're not fell on deaf ears. And I'm wondering, the town managers has had last year $4,500 for continuing education, whatever you want to call it. This year, his budget is $10,000. Does he really need that? If he had to pay for that out of his own pocket, would he be doing that? Would other town employees, when there are continuing education classes given by MMA, Maine Municipal Association, at $50, is it any wonder that the town council does not want the town budget to be voted on in June by the public? They keep saying we're doing a good job. That's why they voted us in here, because we're doing such a good job. Is that why they don't want it to go out, the vote to go out, the municipal budget to go on a vote for the town people to vote on? Because maybe the town doesn't think they're doing as good a job as they think they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll move on.
Next item is under appointments, Order 2011-44, Budget Advisory Board resignation.
You had a member of the Budget Advisory Board, something suddenly came up. He has gave a letter of resignation. You just have to accept that.
All right, do I hear a motion on that?
I make a motion. I don't know who it is.
Okay.
Rick Graham.
Rick Graham.
Rick Graham.
Rick Graham.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
No discussion.
Do you have any discussion on this? I mean, there's not a lot to discuss.
I'd just like to thank Rick Graham for his service. He was, I thought, a very good contributing member of the advisory board. He asked good questions. He tried to get understanding, and he'll be missed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I hope sometime he gets involved again in local politics. I think he had a lot of enthusiasm, and it'll be missed. All those in favor? And opposed?
Order passed 6-0.
All right, next item.
Is Order 2011-45, Interim Assessor.
This
Term-
is
Go ahead.
just to renew Bill's contract up to the end of June, so it's in line with our fiscal year, and then we'll come back to you to extend that for a full year if we get it through the budget process. So just to keep Bill on board before it expires.
Okay, it says 2012.
Yeah, that's a typo.
Should this still be 2011?
It's 2011.
Okay. Do I have any discussion?
Motion to accept.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion on that before we take a vote?
Yep, I have a question.
All right.
Are we gonna look into putting this out and looking what else is available to the town for assessing? There's been a lot of concerns that I voiced and other people have voiced about the job that has been done and what has occurred. And I'd like to see us go out and see what else is available to us as a town for assessing, rather than just Mr. Tynan.
Yeah, I think Mr. Tyne is certainly a very talented individual, but I think I would like to see a full-time assessor brought back. I don't know how other people in the council feel.
I do too. I think we've got one in the person that we have there, but, and I just think that it's time to cut ties and move on in that direction that the town needs to go in, and with our own personal assessor.
Go
Mr.
ahead, Mike.
Chairman, I think we still need Mr. Van Tynen's help and support in getting us through everything that we're still trying to go through. Whether we even go into a reevaluation or not, but I mean, we still have records that need to continue to be updated and things. I mean, we just had one we voted on today that he found for an abatement that hadn't been processed, so I think he's doing a good job. He's doing what we need. I think he's liked by the community so far. I don't think he's turned over any bad leaves or anything. I think he's been very open and honest and everything, and I think he's supporting us as we need to at this point in time. I'm not saying we don't necessarily need a full-time assessor at some point in time, but I think we still need to get through some of these issues and get through this and get things on a level playing field.
You really need to get your records in order before you put somebody in there. He has a tremendous amount of work ahead of him, and the only way it's going to get done is if you do a revaluation, and that's something we'll advocate for extremely hard. But even if we don't move forward with a full-blown evaluation or reval, you need that amount of personnel in there and someone of his expertise to move us forward and get our records in order.
Yeah, I certainly would support keeping him on at least until June 30th, and then we can decide what we want to do further from there. Any further comments from council? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to continue his term until June 30th, 2011, and it's seconded, so all those in favor? And opposed?
Is that, how many opposed?
No, I didn't oppose.
Oh, okay, and abstained? You're abstaining, or you're?
No, I voted.
You're for, okay.
You're just a little slow.
Okay.
I just don't,
All right.
I'm not really excited about it, but I.
All right,
So
so it
that's
was
6-0?
unanimous, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next item?
Counselor Communications.
I have one.
Okay.
Moxie is only 3 months away. We've had several meetings, and all the information that's needed is on the website. The forms for the parade, the vendors, et cetera, are there. And also you can contact Twyla. And I'm the parade chairman. You're welcome to contact me if you have any questions on that. And we do have our theme this year. It's Moxie, Made in a Bottle, so it should be an interesting theme. And hope you all participate in some way.
Roger?
I'd like to bring something up tonight that I learned tonight that was a little upsetting to me. I've been promoting putting the municipal budget out to vote to the townspeople. And we have had it put in my face over and over and over again that if the people want it, the people can do it. And tonight I was informed that the people can't do it. That supposedly there's something written in the charter that doesn't allow it to take place. The people have come out and let the council know. The council has said that if the school board wants the budget voted on and it passes, then we'll do it for the municipal budget. And that went dead. And then it's been one thing right after another, and the people of this town were very open about wanting to vote on their municipal budget. And now, tonight, I'm being told the only way that it can happen is if the council does it. What do the people of the town have to fall back on? We're taking away every possibility for them to do what they want, and what's going to end up happening is, I would suggest, removal of the council and go back to the old type of government so the people can have what they want. If the council is not willing to do it, then I would support and I will head up the removal of the council and go back to the old town meeting type of government and do away with this fiasco because it's not representing its people the way it should.
All right.
And
You have
that's-
something you want to say, Roger?
What it was, because I've been out trying to get signatures, which I have quite a few, and I'm gonna plan on getting about 800. And I had Twyla doing everything, and today, when I was coming through, she had it on the computer. And it's something to do with it's actually the main law, I believe, or something like that. And it comes up and says that the council has to okay it. The people can't okay it. So-
I just forwarded that memo to him.
If I can weigh in on this.
Yeah.
First, I'd like to see what the question was asked, of
Well, Twyla's
who
gonna-
did the interpretation? Maine
MMA,
Municipal?
yeah.
I think for something like that, we should be asking our attorney. He has said all along that the charter allows that. So before we
Okay.
jump to any conclusions about that, I think you need to wait and let your attorney respond to that. Whatever the question is.
Okay,
Okay, would you like to
I'll
take
get
the
a hold of the
podium?
attorney and
Yes.
see what what he's got to say.
First I've heard of it tonight, so we'll have
Yeah.
to look into that, yeah.
David Bowie, Upland Road. I'd like to respond, having been a member of the Charter Commission, I was vice chairman of that commission. The people of the town do have the right to vote on that budget. All it says is that your job is to put the budget together and to pass it. However, if that budget is not acceptable to the people, they can overturn that using the same procedure as you have for everything else, including recalls and petitions. So there's nothing that prevents the people from taking action, but it would get really crazy to try to have the people take that action without your first doing it. When we did this, I personally did much of the research on this, calling a number of municipalities in the state of Maine and internet research. What I found was that there are a few communities that had pretty good luck with having referendums. However, for the most part, what was happening, particularly in a number of outside of the state of Maine communities, they'd have an election, and if there was something that people didn't like, you had to go back and do it again, and again, and again. What was happening in many communities was they could never arrive on either one group wanted it higher or they wanted it lower. They had real difficulty reaching a conclusion, and then what happened was that they were going into their budget year 2, 3, 4, and in a couple cases, halfway through their year before they could pass a budget. That basically handcuffed your community. They couldn't do anything. So the procedure is there for the people to take action when it is completely unacceptable to them. And your job is to make it acceptable to them and make the town work at the same time. That's why you're elected. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any further councilor comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on then.
Executive session, Order 2011-46. to
We don't
go-
need an executive
You don't?
session tonight.
Okay, we don't need that?
Legal counsel wasn't prepared. There's some language changes he has to do.
All right, so ready to adjourn
Adjourn.
to the
Order.
budget workshop? Okay, that's the order. Sorry, Twyla. didn't mean to
Order
interrupt you.
2011-47 to adjourn.
So move.
Second it.
All those in favor? And opposed?
6-0,
All right,
passed.